Welcome back to the daily Living Jewish Kitzur Shulchan Aruch class. We are in section 68, I believe, of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We're learning about the laws of when you're traveling. Anybody planning a trip in the near future? This is the chapter to look at. We spoke about the special prayer of Tfilas Haderech. We spoke about the laws of kosher and how a person should be sure that he can trust regarding the food that he's eating. We spoke about rather davening at home than on the way, even if it's davening a little earlier than the ideal time. And now we're going to speak about when it's time to eat. Here we go. So, firstly, if you're going to have bread, habaytzi bread, and you don't have any water with you, so then what do? So what happens if you're on a plane and you have a roll, and do you have to go to the gully to wash your hands for bread? Or do you not need to inconvenience yourself? So interestingly, we learned previously in chapter 40:14 that if a person is traveling, he should go up to 4 mil, which is about 4 kilometers. If we said it's about, it takes about 72 minutes to walk that distance, according to some opinions. Although 4 kilometers should be less. I'm making a mistake. Anyhow, a person should walk a good around an hour, a little less, a little more, continue on his journey before eating bread if he is going to be approaching a well or a place of water. So based on that, if you are on the plane and you do have bread, then you certainly should get up and wash your hands for bread. That's something very important. If for whatever reason you're unable to, maybe if you're traveling in the car and it'll be and you won't have a place to stop and wash your hands for bread, then you can so try to get to a place. If it's impossible, then you can wrap your hands in gloves of sorts in a way that you won't be touching the bread with your bare hands. We're just discussing now if you're traveling and you don't have water with you and you do have bread with you. So practically speaking, when we do go on a trip, whether it's to Kruger or Pilansberg or wherever it is, so we just take a 5-liter bottle of water with us, those 5-liter bottles that you get from Aquila or whichever company. And in that way we have extra water on us, not just for drinking, but also to wash our hands. At any point, if we want to have bread, we'll pull over, then use that, pour it into a cup, wash our hands with the cup, then proceed to eat. It was also explained that one who eats bread may not leave his place before benching. We also learned that you should bench only while sitting. However, if you ate on the road while you were walking, you would be allowed to bench while walking because it would be hard to suddenly stop in order to bench. But if you ate while sitting, then you should stay sitting for benching. So what this means practically is if you pull over to the side of the road in order to have lunch, you've packed some sandwiches, then you need to bench before you get back on the road because you need to bench at the place that you've eaten. But if you were eating while you were driving, you had some sandwiches and you were eating and driving at the same time, then since you were eating while traveling, it'll be hard for you to suddenly stop. You're on the highway and you would be allowed to bench while driving as well. Obviously, provided that you know the benching by heart, or if you're in the passenger seat and somebody else is driving. So that was as far as washing and benching if you have bread on the way. Obviously, the simple solution is if you are planning a trip, rather pack other types of foods that don't require you to wash and bench. So you could get maybe rather fruits and vegetables or cracker, anything that's not habaytzi, because habaytzi might be a little bit more difficult if you're traveling. But if you do have your regular bagels or sandwiches to go, then you should try hard to wash your hands for bread. If you can't, you could wrap them in a paper, and you should not move on your way until you bench, unless you never stopped at the first place, and it will be hard to stop. Moving on to a zimmer. You know that there's a mitzvah when you bench to call a few people to say, let's bench together. Some people, when traveling and eating in the house of a non-Jew, don't make a mezubah for benching. because it's not considered a fixed meal. This isn't in your home turf. It's not in your comfort zone. Nevertheless, if they set themselves there to eat together as a group, then there's no problem. Then you shouldn't cancel the zimun. Meaning, if you're just joining others in their space, Jews and non-Jews alike, you wouldn't make a zimun. But if there's a group of Jews that are making their own little meal in their own little space, then you would make a zimun. And they should say, if you're in a place and the place is not necessarily a good place, so part of the benching is that Hashem should give blessing to this place. If the place is not a good place, then you would say instead you would modify that bracha to say Hashem should give blessing to where we go, or to our journeys, where we travel. And wherever we may stay always. If they would take up the food of one person, they could say, the master of the home. May Hashem bless the host, referring to the owner of the meal. If not, meaning each person's eating his own food, then may he bless us. Practically speaking, there are a lot of amendments that can be made in that final fourth blessing of the benching towards the end, but practically you can just follow along the siddur, and that works as well. Chabad custom is actually not to change it at all, anytime, but each person should follow their customs. Okay, now we move to Erev Shabbos. Is it okay to go on a long trip when you might come close to Shabbos? When I was a young boy of 10, 11, or 12, I don't remember exactly, we were traveling from New York, me and my sister, my older sister, one of my older sisters, were traveling from New York to back to South Africa. And we were flying via England. And our flight from New York to England, we were supposed to arrive in London. We were supposed to leave New York Thursday morning, and then arrive in London Thursday night. It's a 6-hour difference, and it's about a 10-hour flight, so 16 hours. I think we probably left late Wednesday night. Yes, we're supposed to leave New York late Wednesday night and arrive in London Thursday afternoon, and then take a flight out of Heathrow Thursday night and arrive in Johannesburg on Friday morning. It's the same time, and so you would get there Friday morning. Anyhow, our plane was delayed by about 4 hours going out of New York. And we arrived at Heathrow just after the last flight. Our planned flight flew out from London to Johannesburg. So the next flight was going to be Friday morning. But if we were to leave London Friday morning, we would arrive in South Africa on Shabbos, which obviously wasn't an option. And so we ended up spending the Shabbos in the hotel by the airport. It was a long story. But when you are traveling, you need to ensure that your traveling is not going to interfere with Shabbos, or that the host that you're going to will be prepared to have Shabbos food for you. Because remember, we don't cook on Shabbos, so you need to prepare all the food before Shabbos. If you're just arriving on a regular Tuesday night, and then your host didn't have enough food, then be able to quickly cook up some spaghetti or whatever it is. But on a Friday night, if you're coming close to Shabbos, there's not going to be time for that. So let's see. Let's talk for a moment about traveling on Erev Shabbos on Friday afternoon. She says, halachically, it's prohibited to travel more than 3 parsas. A parsa is about 4 kilometers. The person shouldn't travel more than 4 kilometers on Friday. Some say that nowadays it goes not by distance, but by time. It should make it a little easier with the car. Meaning you would be allowed to drive from here to to 4 ways if it's more than 12 kilometers, because you have a car and you're going quickly. We're talking about maybe the time it would take to walk 12 kilometers, which would be probably around 3 hours. So you shouldn't be going on more than a 3-hour journey on a Friday, whether you're going home or any other destination. Why not? So that your host will have time. You're going home to your wife and children, and so they should have time to adequately make enough Shabbos food. However, nowadays, the law is not adhered to because most people prepare in abundance. It's a nice halacha. So if you're going to show up on somebody's doorstep a few minutes before Shabbos, people like to make a lot of food, and you're probably not going to Obviously, depends how many you are. If you're coming with a whole tribe, then that would be a problem. Nevertheless, you should take great care to arrive at your place of accommodation when there's still sufficient daylight, because many violations of Shabbos result due to late arrivals. A practical example is we were once as a family in Israel, and we missed our flight, and we were going to fly out of Israel on Thursday via Turkish Airlines, coming to Johannesburg Friday morning, and the only next available flight we had before Shabbos was Friday morning. El Al had a direct flight Friday morning. That El Al flight comes in pretty close to Shabbos. Now, we'd already checked out of where we were staying, so we were at that point had nowhere to go. We'd have to book into a new hotel with the whole family and all. And now I had this question: am I allowed to board this flight that's going to be arriving close to Shabbos? Anyhow, I called up my rabbi. There could be delays, things could happen. I called up my rabbi, and my rabbi said that it's okay for me to take the flight, certainly under the circumstances with the children and all, and that there was still a number of hours from when the flight landed until Shabbos came in, and thank God we were fine. But if you're going to be arriving late, close to Shabbos, then you may be violating the law in many ways. You don't want to plan a flight that comes in close to Shabbos. And so don't rationalize by saying the day is yet long and the road is good. Same thing if, I don't know, you're in Durban or in Plet and you wanted to drive back in time for Shabbos, don't be silly. One final point which you didn't mention over here is that the main reason why you shouldn't arrive close to Shabbos is so that your host will have food. He said if they have abundance, it's not a problem. But nowadays there's a new phenomenon, which is communication, technological communication. Nowadays, if you can send a message to somebody and they're expecting you to come, you don't need to send it in the mail like the old days. So that obviously they'll be able to prepare whatever is needed because you're letting them know in advance. It's as if you showed up in advance because they know in advance. So that would also resolve it. So although halachically speaking, it originally said that you're not allowed to travel more than this distance on a Friday, since the halacha gives the reasons so that people will be able to have food for you for Shabbos, nowadays that's not a problem, but you do need to be sure to arrive with enough time to be able to be ready for Shabbos before Shabbos comes in. Now, what happens if you find yourself on Shabbos mid-journey at an inn? So you were driving back from Plet, and then suddenly, I don't know, you had a mechanical problem with your car, or you had some kind of issue, you got stuck, and now you find yourself at some holiday inn on the side of the roads on some highway between Plet and Johannesburg, and you're there for Shabbos, and you have money on you. Okay, if it's a regular hotel, then you should be fine. You should be able to just put it into the cupboard. But I guess if you're talking where you have money and you're worried that it's going to be taken. So if you could deposit it safely with someone or hide it, then you're not allowed to keep it in your pocket because it's booked. So you're not allowed to handle money on Shabbos. I was once on a bus from Manhattan to New Jersey. And I was coming close to Shabbos because on Fridays we'd have a route where we would visit businesses and put tefillin on the guys and give Shabbos candles to the girls. And it was a long route and it was winter. So what I did was I sent all my stuff ahead. We were going to cousins in New Jersey. And then I planned on taking the last possible bus from New York to New Jersey. And then I thought if there are any delays, I'll just get off the bus and I'll walk because I just checked out the map beforehand. I should be, as long as I would easily be in walking distance a while before Shabbos. Anyhow, my mistake was that I had a Shabbos publication that had Shabbos times, but it was actually for Montreal, not New York. And I'm sitting on the bus, and suddenly it already looks like the sun is setting. And I'm looking at my clock, and I'm looking at the publication, and it says I've still got whatever it is, another 30, 40 minutes. And I'm looking out the window, and it doesn't look that way. Anyhow, I realized something's wrong. I got off the bus, I had money on me. So as I got up the bus, there was some lawn, some grass over there. And I just quickly dug up a little hole next to some signpost and stuck the money inside and put the soil back in place. And I don't remember, I should remember this, but I don't remember if I found it after Shabbos or not. I just remember it was quite a strange act of digging a hole and hiding money, because money is muktzah. So if you can hide it, then you must. If you're worried about it being stolen, then you could sew it into your garments on Friday. I mean, nowadays, how many people are walking around with a sewing kit? But back then, if you're going to stay in the house, because even if you sew it into your clothes, if there's no Erev, you're still not allowed to, it's still considered carrying because it doesn't serve your garment to any use. But at least it wouldn't be an issue of muktzah because it's sewn out of sight. If there's concern that if you stuck it in the house, because now you've got money sewn into your pants, and therefore you don't want to be carrying it, and you're worried that you'll be robbed, okay, it's not a new phenomenon, it's an old phenomenon, then you can go out with it sewn in your garments, even though you're carrying, but I guess it's not the same level of carrying under the circumstances will allow it. And going out is prohibited also, but if it is in your pocket, then you are not be allowed to leave it all. So basically, if you've got money in your pocket on Shabbos, and there's no Erev, then and you don't want to shake the money out of the pocket because it's valuable, which is probably what you should do. But if you're not doing that, then you would be stuck at home. You wouldn't be able to leave because you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos, obviously, unless there is an Erev. Which also reminds me of another story. What was the second story? Oh, it was quite an amazing story. It's a long story, but the story in short was that there were these two Chabad rabbis that were going to a conservative camp in the United States to do a Shabbaton, to run a Shabbos programs for the camp. These were Chabad rabbis. The camp was not Orthodox, and the driver that picked them up from the airport got terribly lost. It was close to Shabbos, and eventually they told the driver to pull over, and they stayed by I don't know if it was pretty much by a petrol station, an in-by petrol station, and they could go no further because Shabbos had come in and it was too far to walk, so they stayed there the whole Shabbos. Now the driver, who wasn't religious, continued on his way. He realized they wouldn't move, so he went back to the camp, and all the campers were waiting for their guests of honor for the special Shabbaton. And to their dismay, the driver told them, your guests are just 15-20 minute drive away, but they're not coming. And that caused a tremendous commotion in the whole camp, that our scholars in residence, our guest rabbis, are stuck on the side of the roads and they can't make it here. And after Shabbos, they went into the camp and they already had their flight back on Saturday night, but they had maybe an hour or two to spend with the boys, and they sang some Jewish songs. And the sequel to that story was many, many years later, one of these rabbis met a grown-up person, an adult now, not just a kid in camp, and he said that made such a deep impression on him to see the rabbi's values. How Shabbos was Shabbos. There was nothing he could do about it. And as a result of that, he completely transformed his life to become closer to Hashem, do more mitzvahs, and be more observant. So the rabbis, just by standing to their values, in their absence of camp, actually maybe had more of an impact on the campers than had they actually been there. That's just talking about traveling on the way and getting stuck for Shabbos.